I have a feeling everybody was muted coming in.
Oh, I can hear Rita now.
I knew we'd succeed.
You can hear now, Dad?
Yeah, I can hear her now, although there is a cross on Rita Freed's mic.
Yes. So what you might want to do is, can you click the three dots on my profile? Like if you hover over
You are off
my
now. I
name.
cannot hear you now. Yeah.
So if you click on my profile, like my video, and then you click the three dots there.
You got my profile.
Like if you click on me, Salma, click on my video on the Zoom.
Okay.
And there's three dots. Do you see the three dots? Do you see make co-host?
Make voice.
Host or co-host, yeah, either one.
Yeah.
Okay, click co-host. If there's no co-host, then click host.
Do you want to keep the host magazine?
Yes.
No, in this case, you are the host completely.
For now, that's okay, just so then I can figure out Rita's situation, and then I can put you back as the host.
Okay.
Yeah, Selma, I have that you're a host now.
Perfect. Okay, so I am going to remove your other one. Let's see. I'll remove the one that is muted.
Perfect.
Okay. So that's that. And then we have some more people joining the waiting room. Dad, can you hear us now?
From Rita now.
Sorry, Dad?
There is echo from here.
There is echo.
There is no echo from Rita.
No echo from Rita. If anybody in the chat could just confirm if you're hearing an echo. I know someone messaged before in the chat. That's why I'm. Richard said there's still an echo.
Tariq, are you with us? Yeah, Tariq.
There is some echo, yeah.
What we can do, Rita, if it's not solvable, is just whenever someone else is talking, you can just put yourself on mute, because it's only coming out of that, and then I think maybe that might solve the problem.
Okay, I have my phone on and nearby. Do you think that would affect it? It shouldn't, should it?
I don't think so. It might be.
Right now, there is no echo coming from Rita.
People in the chat, Dad, are saying that there is an echo. But it's okay. The echo is only when someone who's not Rita is speaking, then the echo comes from.
There is no echo when Rita speaks.
You're okay with the echo?
No, I don't hear an echo when
Rita
speaks. I don't.
I have something that says live performance audio is on, which disables noise suppression and other audio processing. Would you like to turn it off? Let me turn it off.
No, I think you are okay. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Somebody in the chat says that the echo has gone away. So I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Good.
Okay, yeah.
Amazing. Fabulous.
I think after all these years, I just think Zoom keeps changing and keeps tricking us.
I think so too. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining. I will say that we can get started. However, of course, before we get started, I do think that Dr. Freed, although might not need an introduction with all of her accolades, I am more than honored to tell you a little bit more about your speaker today before we get into the lecture. So, Dr. Rita Freed was born in Newark, United States, and she and is an American educator and Egyptologist. She was a curator of the Department of Ancient Egyptian, Nubian, and Near Eastern Art at the Museum of Fine Arts. And she had overseen the planning of the MFA's new classical galleries. And she even worked with the FBI on DNA testing of the head of the mummy. Rita, I might need you to come in here.
Jehudi knocked.
Jehudi knocked. So she's a specialist in Egyptian and Nubian art, and she received her BA in Ancient Near Eastern Archaeology and Biblical Studies from Wellesley College, and her MA and PhD in Egyptian and Ancient Near Eastern Art and Archaeology from the Institute of Fine Arts, New York University. She rose to Associate Professor of Art at the University of Memphis and founding director of the Institute of Egyptian Art and Archaeology before going to the MFA Boston to head the Department of Ancient Egyptian, Nubian, and Near Eastern Art, where she became the John F. Cogan Jr. and Mary L. Cornell Chair Emerita of the department. She's an adjunct professor of art at Wellesley College. She's excavated in Egypt, Israel, and Cyprus. The excavations she has curated and co-curated include Egypt's Golden Age, A Divine Tour of Ancient Egypt, Ramses the Great, Pharaohs of the Sun, The Secrets of Tomb 10A, and very special to the Nubian and Sudanese community is Ancient Nubia Now, which took place at the Museum of Fine Arts, where actually a group of members from the Sudanese community in Ottawa, we all drove down to the museum, and Rita spoke to us and taught us all together, and it was really such an honor. And this exhibit really was it was an amazing experience to see as a Sudanese person. So she's but of all of these accolades, to the descendant of the Nubians, like I said, her biggest achievement for us would be the making of the exhibition Ancient Nubia Now and the production of the book Arts of Ancient Nubia with Denise Doxey and Lawrence Berman. So this is also fascinating with the Museum of Fine Arts because they have the largest collection of Nubian artifacts outside of Sudan, over 25,000. And maybe one day we can have a joint exhibition at the ROM, or maybe the MFA can lend us artifacts to bring more of that here to Canada. But without further ado, I'll let you learn from Dr. Freed herself.
Right, just before we proceed, very quickly, I want to tell you a little bit about the host. The host is NUSCA, Nubian Society Canada, and our vision is to contribute to the protection and dissemination of Nubian heritage within current cultural communities and ensure its preservation for future generations. Our primary objective is to influence Canadian policy and Canadian international development agencies to support the preservation of the now fragmented Nubian heritage. We aim to shed knowledge-based professional and cultural light on Nubian civilizations, heritage, archaeology, music, and their roots in Sudan. And just to give you a very quick example of how serious the situation is, the main active communication with UNESCO and encourage greater efforts to protect the Nubian sites and recover stolen artifacts. For that, we need to urge the government of Sudan to ratify the 1970 Paris Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer and ownership of cultural property. Until the minute we are talking now, Sudan has not signed on it, and consequently it has not been assented. So we have got no international legal cover. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you both. Thank you, Selma. Thank you, Taj. Let me just say I applaud you for all that you are doing, and I can't tell you how honored I am One, that you've accepted me, and two, that you regard me as an expert in a culture that is yours. And I will say yours first, but it really belongs to the world. I am appalled that so few people know about Nubia and its wonderful ancient monuments and modern people. And I hope together we can change that, maybe a little bit at a time. So Nubia is really a culture I love. I think Nubia found me. It found me when I was appointed chair of the Department of Ancient Egyptian, Nubian, and Near Eastern Art at the MFA, but it found me even before that when I was fortunate to take courses in it. And you can't see the monuments of ancient Nubia. And I have been privileged to visit the monuments of Nubia, both in the Sudan and in southern Egypt. You can't see them and not stand in awe of them and wonder about the people who created such beautiful monuments. I'm in awe of the people today. Because to me, you've not only given me your friendship, but you also represent an unbroken line to a glorious past. So when Taj asked me to talk about Nubia's ancient heritage and why it's important to preserve it, especially today when it's under this horrible attack like never before, I thought about how I would describe ancient Nubia. And a few words came to mind, and I'm just going to read them. Powerful, creative, fearless, limitless, ingenious, enduring, artistic, resilient, humane, tolerant, fierce, clever, smart. And I could go on, but I won't. I am very privileged to have been in charge of the collection I was, and as I said, privileged to have visited Sudan on a number of occasions. And what I saw was what I experienced was an indescribable awe. And what I saw was a beauty and a monumentality, and unparalleled creativity. And it's difficult to share that feeling, but I'm going to try as I take you through 8,000 years or so of ancient Nubian art and culture. From the beginning of ceramics come in about 10,000 years ago, circa 8,000 BC, all the way through, maybe up till today, but really through all Nubia's three empires to through the Meroitic period. And I'll do that by sharing my favorite objects. And in that, I'm going to ask you to share, some maybe you already have shared your screen. So let me get rid of this, and I trust you, just like in ancient Nubia. I trust we are this is a communal effort. So I trust you to tell me. Whoops, we lost the statue of Senkameniskin, but you'll see it again. So I trust you to tell me if you, for whatever reason, cannot see my screen. So moving on, this is not a group I need to identify Nubia for, but just to orient you, Nubia is, of course, a land of cataracts. You see the first cataract in Aswan, above and below that wonderful image a friend of mine took of the Mogren, of the juncture of the Blue and White Nile. I have never seen it that clearly myself, but I hope that one day I will again. I have been there, but it was quite muddy, but never mind. So let's begin. Pottery, ceramics. This pot is maybe 7,500 years old or so. And when I look at this, I don't see the beginnings of an effort to create ceramics. I see a masterwork. I see something that endures, that is timeless. I see something that is a beautiful shape, that is a complicated manufacture. First of all, it was made by hand, and how they did it so perfectly, I don't know. It was formed by hand, then it was polished, or what we call burnished, then it was incised. And if you look at the shape, the triangle decoration really mimics the shape. And of course, it flares out, comes in at a very narrow waist, and has a rounded bottom. And the decoration also highlights those shapes. What I envision, of course, you couldn't put this down because it has no flat bottom, but close your eyes and envision a chieftain holding this up and pouring a liquid libation over a grave or as an offering to a god. This was really performance art at its best. And the whole act of the beauty of the chalice would enhance the wonder of the act. So this is how it all begins, with these incredibly sophisticated ceramics. Nothing like this exists in Egypt. I will say that Egypt tried to imitate them and they failed miserably, and I won't even show you those. One thing Nubia did share with Egypt is Egypt's early so-called Nagata culture. It was called the A group in Nubia. But what you see here are black and red vessels, black-topped red vessels. And this is something that will endure in Nubia throughout ancient Nubian history. And what's interesting is that we refer to these as the A group vessels, the A group having lived between the first and the second cataracts around 3,800 to 3,000 BC or so. But these ceramics also are found in southern Egypt, where they're known as ceramics of the Nagata culture. And what I'm getting at here is that there was not only interaction, but there was one culture for a period of time. And then Egypt went off to do its thing, and Nubia went off to do its own thing. So this Nagata culture and at one point, the A group culture were really one. So the question becomes, where does kingship originate? Where does Egyptian kingship originate? And this is something that will always be hotly debated. But what I'm showing you here on the bottom left is an incense burner. Now, incense burners are common in Nubian tombs at this time, say around 3000 BC, maybe a little later, a little later. But incense burners are not an Egyptian kind of object. So the form of the object itself is distinctly Nubian. But if you look at the decoration on it, and I know you won't see it all, but you'll see a bit in the line drawing. What you'll see are many bits of iconography, including what would later be known as the Upper Egyptian crown, the falcon deity Horus, and a palace facade motif. These are motifs that come to characterize Egyptian kingship, not Nubian kingship, but Egyptian kingship. But this vessel was found in Nubia, in Kustal, again, between the first and second cataracts. So we have a Nubian vessel with what later becomes associated with Egyptian iconography, and it exists in Egypt too. So I would say, for me, that kingship is the idea of kingship is really a joint idea between Nubia and Egypt. And this will, of course, is hotly debated. But around 3000 BC, the cultures diverge. And what we have is, oops, I'm sorry, my phone just went off. Chester, I can't talk now. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you. So sorry. In any event, what we had, that was Chester Higgins, who's a famous photographer of Nubia.
Yeah.
And my fault for not turning the phone off. What we have here are characteristic A group vessels, not like anything that the Egyptians are making. But what is so interesting to me, and I don't really want to, this is not a lecture about comparing Egypt to Nubia. It's what makes Nubia unique. So you saw that first wonderful chalice. Here on this vessel, you see those same triangles, not incised in this case, but painted. So pendant triangles, which really, again, echo the shape of the pot. So we have the potter and the painter really working together, if it's not the same person. But these, again, are vessels that if they stood on their own, they would have been buried in the sand and filled with whatever commodity. What you see, again, is something handmade, and something that's not only very thin, but also painted, and painted here in an imitation of basketry. Here, it's both painted and incised, like we saw before. So I think what I'm trying to get at here is it wasn't enough to just make a pot, like a flower pot, a utilitarian pot. There was an urge to decorate, to make things beautiful. And it was meticulous, because if you tried to make this pot, for example, which also has a black interior and a black rim, by the way, you think of how long it would take you and how meticulous you would have to be to both get it perfectly incised, or to paint it first and then incise it perfectly so that it worked all together. By the way, this is a timeline above, and you will see this blue line march across as we go through. So we're now about 3000 BC. And I will try to advance my images there. So in the same area between the first and second cataracts, around 2400 BC, we get an even more sophisticated kind of pottery, a pottery that we know as the C group. Archaeologists never agree on names. It was George Reisner, the infamous George Reisner, infamous and a good archaeologist at the same time, infamous for his views, but a good archaeologist who named these cultures because he didn't know what else to call them. He recognized they were early. So what I'm looking at here is an ever more complex decoration. Simple bowls, again handmade, again on the one on the right, you see the combination black and red, but again, this meticulous and perfectly balanced incision. And you see that particularly here, where the whole vessel was divided in quarters and each quarter was separately treated. There are myriad different decorations, all of which conform, believe it or not, to mathematical rules, as one of my students once pointed out to me. So just incredibly sophisticated. The rim is always separated out here by a different kind of design, and here as well, the holes, because there was a lid on it at one time. So at about the same time as the C group is in existence between the second and third cataracts, oops, I think we're going in the wrong direction. We also get that famous site that you all know, Kerma. The site of Kerma is beginning to develop. Kerma, that will later, from around 2400 to 1500 BCE, a true empire that lasted for almost 1,000 years. We see here at the third cataract what is certainly at the time the largest man-made mud brick structure in the world, and probably still the largest in Africa. One estimate I heard was that there were 1 million bricks used to make this, 1 million unbaked mud bricks. So this is what is left after more than 3,500 years. You can imagine what it was originally. And the people in the middle here give you a sense of scale. So what is it, and what is the culture that produced it? I refer to it as the first empire of Nubia, Kerma, the first empire of Nubia. Many people do, and justifiably so. We think this was a temple. And these people are standing, the temple would have been entered on the side, and these people are standing in an area where a number of bones of sheep were found. We think that there would have been a temporary structure on the top for the worship of a deity. Now, what deity is not totally clear. However, the evidence we have, or the sheep bones that I mentioned, and not found at that mud brick structure, which is known as the Defufa, which is, I understand it, as I understand it, a term still used in Nubia today for a large mud brick structure. But not found in there, but found nearby, was this head of a ram and this body. We don't know if the two go together, but they were found in the same place, actually a tomb. When I look at the ram's head, I see that innate power in that animal. It's not modeled in a detailed way. It's quartzite, it's stone. It's just very sparsely shaped in a way that tells us exactly what it is. So there's no extra detailing to distract us, but you really get a sense of the power of that animal. And if you've ever seen rams fighting, rams fight to the death, and they have powerful horns, and they're tenacious, and they're strong. And these are all characteristics that would make for an impressive deity. And we presume that it went along with a body, something like this one that was found nearby. What immediately comes to mind here, yes, it's a lion's body, but it's colored. It has this brilliant blue glaze. It's also quartzite. Now, stone and glazing do not usually go hand in hand. And the reason for that is if you heat stone, if you heat stone, it cracks. And in order to glaze or color a stone, to make the color adhere, you need to heat it. So why didn't this break? More than it has, at least. How does the glaze adhere? Well, we think this is something the Nubians invented, this technique for glazing stone, for coloring stone. And we think that what they did was to heat the stone, to apply the glaze, and heat the stone gradually so that the color would gradually sink in, to heat it gradually and then cool it, and heat it gradually again and then cool it. And that finally made the glaze adhere, at least partially. So as I said, that statue is not found at the Defufa in the west, but it was found more toward the east. This is another Defufa. It's not a temple, but it's a funerary chapel, and probably the funerary chapel of a king. So what the people of Kerma did was divide their city from their cemetery. And their cemetery over 1,000 years was unbelievably vast. There are 30,000 tombs and counting. And some of them much bigger than others, some the size of a football field, an American football field, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this was the house or chapel where the funerary rites were celebrated. And you can see you can see the entrance in the. There are a couple of rooms. They were painted. They're fascinating traces of paintings preserved. But what I want to point out is that as you entered, you would have been flanked by two lions, large-scale lions like this that would have been inlaid on each side of the entrance. So again, colorful. The Nubians figured out how to make, this is not glazed stone, but glazed faience, which is a powdered stone. They figured out how to do this in their own way, and they inlaid it into this chapel, which would have, walking between two lions would have instilled fear in anybody. So in the area of that chapel were tombs, and the tombs took the form of low mounds, what we still call. And you can see those mounds here and all around. Every place you see a mound is a tomb. On the left, on the left is a certain person. What you see is a tomb that's ringed by thousands, literally thousands of animal horns, mostly cattle, and in the form of a herd. So mothers, young calves, and then the bulls, and also other kinds of animals. And when you think about this, cattle are wealth, and thousands. What it just it shows you what we don't know. Did these come slaughtered all at once? Imagine, think of how much meat a cow produces. How many people would have come together at the funerary ceremonies of this king who's interred here? Was this over months? Were these cattle brought from all over? These are just questions that await answers and will shed more light on the culture. But this characteristic of slaughtering animals to surround so that the heads surround the burial is happens around 2000 to maybe 1700 BCE, a period we call Middle Kerma. But at the final phase of Kerma, we get these tombs the size of football fields, of which you're looking down one here. This is central corridor and side chambers where they're not sacrificing animals anymore, they're sacrificing people. We don't know why. Every culture, almost every culture at one point has human sacrifice to appease the gods. We don't know, but what is clear is that it took one powerful individual to create this. And he, we assume, although maybe not, was buried in the area, in the area on your upper right. Now, what's interesting about not only this burial, but many, many of the others, the wealthiest of the burials, is that those who could afford it were buried on beds. And thanks to some of you, I know that it is still accustomed today not to bury on beds, but to bring the deceased to the tomb on beds. Nubians are the only Islamic culture to do so, or the only culture to do so that I know of, which for sure is a continuity. But what I don't think is done today is to decorate not the headboards, but the footboards of beds. As you see here, they had headrests for the heads, but you look down at your universe, and I'm going to show you some of these inlays that were put into the wooden footboards of the beds, because they're really wonderful. And to me, they show that the closeness of the people of Kerma to their natural environment and how they understood the animals. And the Nubians became very famous in the Egyptian world as warriors, fearsome, accurate. They were mercenaries for the Egyptian army, and part of that was that they were keen observers, skilled hunters, and these depictions of animals show me why. I look in the upper right here of this bustard just lifting off the ground, and I can, you can see, you just sense that movement, and his girth explains why it's so difficult. Or this little ostrich with the little tiny wings trying to levitate. This, of course, is an elephant. We get a turtle swimming. I'm not sure why it's doing that. A hippo swimming, and my favorite, of course, is this giraffe. The giraffe is nibbling on the ground. It's got a long neck, of course. It's got long legs, and then it's got long wings that sort of frame the whole composition. I think it's just, you have to look twice to realize it's a fanciful animal, but it's done so cleverly. So, of course, I'm going to come back to ceramics. We are here in the classic Kerma period around, say, 1600 BCE, well over 1,000 years after the blacktop redware we saw earlier, more than 1,500 years, in fact. Still a similar technique, more refined, thinner, still handmade. and in my opinion, also a sense of humor, because if you see the tulip beakers on the left here, these were all placed in the tomb. All of these things were placed in the tomb for the afterlife, to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. So these are two different beakers. But here is one beaker made to look like a bunch of beakers piled one inside the other, because it's much easier to do it that way. Never mind that it's completely unstable and unwieldy, but it would still magically function as a group of beakers. Here, the spout suggested the head of a ram, so they augmented it. This is an infant feeder, we think. So it just incredible creativity in ceramics still. Now, as you might have guessed, Kerma is a pretty powerful empire. You don't have several thousand animals buried at your tomb or several hundred people sacrificed, unless you are unless you wield significant power. Kerma becomes an empire by extending its influence. We don't know how far south, but we do know that they not only entered Egypt all the way past the north of the First Cataract to at least El Kab, which is just south of Thebes, and they plundered Egypt. Now, here you have a dagger that's characteristically Nubian, and again, it's gold, it's copper, and it's ivory. And those three colors just go so beautifully together. So what is really a deadly weapon becomes an object of beauty. Look at the way they put the rivets in here in this straight line that connects the long blade to the hilt and so forth. What you have on the right is unquestionably an Egyptian statue. However, this statue was found in that large tomb I showed you earlier. So what the Nubians are doing somehow is plundering Egypt. And this is, you don't get a sense of scale from this, but this statue is life-size. So how in the world do they get a life-size statue intact from somewhere in Egypt to the third cataract of the Nile, where Kerma is located? So these were trophies for the people of Kerma, and that's why they're found in the largest tombs. So Egypt takes note of this fact that the people of Kerma are invading, and Egypt develops its own dynasty, its own strong dynasty at around 1500 BC, and they build Egypt's first empire, and that empire includes not only the Levant, Israel, Jordan, Syria, but it also includes Nubia. And they come down south and they trounce the people of Kerma, and they continue even further down to the fourth cataract, and they continue at where the arrow is, and they stop at this mountain. And I suspect you've all been there. This is Jebel Barkal, that mountain that rises majestically and mysteriously out of literally nowhere, because the area around is flat sand desert. And you see the pinnacle here, that the Egyptians, the mountain was a womb to the Egyptians. The pinnacle represented the upper a uraeus or snake with the upper Egyptian crown, and they dedicated this to their god Amun and made it a holy site. We don't know if anything existed there beforehand, but people are looking. What they did at the foot of this mountain was to build a temple, a traditional Egyptian temple to Amun. Now, the photograph on the left was taken from on top of the mountain, looking directly down, I think with my husband holding onto my feet. And this is a reconstruction of what the temple would have looked like. And so the Egyptians dedicated it to Amun, but it wasn't their traditional Amun. Amun in Egypt was shown as a man with two tall feathers. Amun Amen in Nubia, remember the ram was sacred in Nubia. In Nubia, they combine the image of the ram with their idea of Amen. And all of a sudden, Amen has the head of a ram, and in this case, the entire body of a ram. So the Egyptians took the Nubian idea of the ram as a deity and featured it not only in Nubia, but took it to Egypt as well. So if you stand in front of the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, you will see an avenue of rams leading up to the first pylon. And so it went two ways, and the Egyptians learned from the Nubians as well. So Amen became a shared god. Well, 500 years of Egyptian, not exactly, well, occupation, not really colonization, but the Nubian traditions, the Nubian culture might have gone underground, but it still persisted and it prevailed. Because around 750 BCE, a king by the name of Kashta, there's a new dynasty in Nubia, and it's centered around the Fourth Cataract, around Jebel Barkal. And Kashta, one of the founders of that dynasty, expands his power all the way up to probably Aswan in Egypt. And then we don't know what happens. But we do know that his son, a man by the name of Pianki, goes back, repeats what his father did, and takes his campaign all the way to the Delta. So he conquers Egypt, but he's not a heartless warrior who slaughters everybody in his path. This was a different kind of warfare. He goes to Karnak, which is sacred to Amen in Egypt, and he pays reverence to Amen because, after all, Amen is a Nubian god as well. He celebrates a festival. He goes on up to the petty kinglets in Egypt, and those who will surrender readily, he accepts their tribute, and he leaves them at peace. Though it's only those like Memphis who fight him that he attacks. And there's a wonderful 500+ line stela in the Cairo Museum that in Pianki's words describes his battles. So Pianki goes all the way up to the Delta, as you see here, accepts the tribute of all of these petty kinglets and defeats those who don't readily give him tribute. And he brings this tribute home. He conquers Egypt and then leaves. Because, after all, Nubia is his homeland. But like any dutiful father, he takes presents with him to his family. And these three objects none is more than 2 inches high. One is made of marble, one is a crystal ball with a gold top. The figure up here is malachite. I have no doubt that these were made in Egypt, and these were tribute taken by Pianki, because they're not materials found in Nubia. And at this point, there's no real tradition of making things like this in Nubia. So I think Pianki just swipes them, or is given them, and he hands them out as souvenirs to his wives. We know he had at least 6 wives, and a number of them had these things and others in their tombs. But what's interesting is that they had not only these characteristically Egyptian objects, but together with that, they had what I think of as distinctly Nubian objects. These are large, and by large I mean 3 or 4 inches high, amulets. Now, the core of the amulets themselves there's an Egyptian core, but they are not Egyptian. The Nubians take them and they make them work for their own beliefs. So, for example, here is a god by the name of Ptaikos. Now, Ptaikos usually has a human head. Here he has a ram's head. And Ptaikos, to my knowledge, does not have wings. But the Nubians liked winged things for reasons that I don't quite know. And for the Nubians, no amount of magic was too much. So rather than just the seated god Thoth, they've added an Ankh sign and a lotus flower here. But my favorite is this healing eye, this magical eye, where every aspect of the eye has more magic. Including the symbol of creation, the scarab, the seated god Thoth here shown as a baboon, winged snakes, and another eye. So this is something, this idea of filling every available space is also a Nubian concept. And again, the love of color prevails. And the Nubian ideal of beauty is distinct. It's distinct and distinctly different from the Egyptian ideal of beauty. So on your right, we get a goddess. I don't know who she is, but she is clearly Nubian. Her wings, her hands are at her sides and attached to wings, and they're really meant to be projecting out and meant to protect you. But look at her body. Her body screams power. It screams voluptuousness. It says, I am taking up space. I am strong. I am to be feared. And if that weren't clear enough, here we have a lioness. That is a female body with a lion head or a lioness head. And that is also a symbol of power. And she has that same Nubian body. So these are all amulets found in Pianki's queen's tombs. Now, the Nubian kings who ruled after Pianki, for the most part, realized that Egypt was something. If they were to control Egypt, they needed to live there. But they built monuments, particularly a king by the name of Taharqa, built monuments both in Egypt and in Nubia. So Taharqa particularly, more than 30 temples, both in Egypt and Nubia, that he either built or augmented. And realizing that the Egyptians had a long tradition of carving in hard stone, he simply sent the Egyptian sculptors to Nubia to produce what he wanted. Now, how do I know this? Because Taharqa tells us this. He tells us this in a monumental stela, that he sent the artists down to Nubia to produce the monuments he wants. So here are but a sample of three colossal, and by colossal, I mean well over life size, like 10 feet, 12 feet, I think as much as 15 feet, just from Jebel Barkal, just from one site. And here, again, superficially, they look Egyptian. Left foot forward, hands at their sides. But when we look closely, we see that they are distinctly Nubian. So these are Egyptian sculptors, I almost undoubtedly, but they are answering to a Nubian overlord. And that Nubian overlord is telling them to produce Nubian faces, to produce strong muscles, a thick neck, a Nubian cap crown, not one, but two snakes, two uraei at the brow, and also a distinctive earrings that show rams, ram heads with sun discs, and a necklace like a lariat with a ram here, and what would have been a ram here. Now, the image on the left, well, I have to tell you, is a reproduction. There was not only Jebel Barkal had these colossal statues of kings, but there are at least 3 caches, or 3 different sites had caches of colossal statues of kings that we know of. One of them was Kerma, and that was found by the great excavator of Kerma, Charles Bonnet, in the early part of the 21st century. And you will notice, in fact, I'll go back to the previous. You will notice that some areas of the statue some areas are polished to a high gloss. Some areas are deliberately left rough. And it's not that they weren't finished. It's that those areas were made to be plastered and gilded. And there was an exhibition at the reproduction laser reproduction reproduce the gilding that would have been on those statues. So this gives us an idea of what those statues would have looked like. So you have to imagine approaching a temple like the Dafufa or approaching a temple like Jebel Barkal and seeing these colossal statues outside with the sun bouncing off the gold, and you knew you were in an empire. So these kings were buried in pyramids, and I think you probably all know there are more pyramids in Nubia than there are in Egypt. More pyramids are found all the time in both places, actually. And they're for both royalty and non-royal individuals. But the Nubian pyramids, particularly the royal pyramids, which are here in Napata at the Fourth Cataract at this time, are a different shape. They're smaller and they're steeper. And one other significant fact about them is that the pyramids are solid, and the burial chambers are underneath the pyramids, entered far by a stairway far from the east that ultimately leads underneath the pyramid. Now, whether they built the pyramid first or the burial chambers first, I'm not sure. And how they knew to get the pyramid right above the burial chambers, I also don't know, but they did most of the time. In any event, these were, as you can see from the people, not as large as the Egyptian pyramids, and most of them, not surprisingly, were plundered. But we do know from a few of them that at least two kings of Napata had enormous stone sarcophagi or burial boxes like this one that's in the Museum of Fine Arts. It is 16 tons. It is covered with texts and decoration. While the texts are written in hieroglyphs and they represent Egyptian funerary texts, they're cut and pasted and combined in a way that no Egyptian would have ever done. And the decoration similarly. The Nubians have their own aesthetic, they take what is useful to them and mold it into something that is their own. So again, superficially, this looks, close examination shows it's anything but. So inside this sarcophagus, you would have had an anthropoid or human-shaped coffin. It would have been probably wood, overlaid in gold, inlaid in semi-precious stones of all colors, really a sight to behold. And what treasures did these tombs yield? Well, what we know is what the robbers left behind. And in this case, they left behind, this is Taharka's tomb, they left behind these little tiny, seemingly nothing statuettes known as shawabtis. The Egyptians had them too, but they had a different meaning here. Here they lined the burial chambers and really served as protection. They were, in the case of Taharka, they were all made of stone, all individually carved. And while an Egyptian king might have as many as 400, Taharka had 1,400. And you look at them and they're each, as I said, each individually carved, but each has its own distinctive look. Massed together, they are pretty amazing. And a few of them are now on view at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston permanently. So if you're down there, do have a look. But when you take these by themselves and look at them, they are truly majestic. You really sense the royalty here. And we tend to dismiss them because there's so many of them. But there was one tomb, the tomb of King Espelta, whose sarcophagus I showed you, that was not completely plundered. And it wasn't completely plundered because it collapsed. There's a very high water table. It collapsed while the thieves were plundering it. So this array gives us a taste of what the tombs originally held. And just a cursory examination tells me that the Nubians of the Napatan period were master goldsmiths, master gold workers, because just this ewer, a simple, elegant shape, was raised from one single piece of gold. Now, it's easy to hammer a piece of gold and make it expand, but then to make it contract to this long neck, I dare say, many goldsmiths would be challenged to do that today, and they did it all by hand. But my favorite is this alabastron, and I love talking about this. It's called an alabastron because it's made of alabaster. It's a common shape throughout the Mediterranean. Egypt, the vessel itself might have been made in Egypt. However, the cartouche of espelta that you may be able to see here and not so well here, was clearly made in Nubia. And the most amazing thing, of course, is that rim and cap. Nothing like that exists. It's incredible. It's beautiful. It's complex, and it's magical. What you see dangling from the rim are braided gold wires. You see carnelian, amazonite, and part of a meteoric stone. And that hangs from the rim. And underneath this collar is single bits of gold fused onto a surface, once filled with colored enamel, cloisonné enamel. So for just a simple vessel a few inches high, they took great pains and made it into something unique. Well, the empire of Napata never really ended. There was no, what happened was that Egypt became less of an interest to the Nubians, and they turned their attention to further south in Africa. And this was about the time around 330 or so BCE when the Ptolemies conquered Egypt, and then Egypt was conquered by the Romans, and Egypt effectively ceased to exist. Well, the Ptolemies may have raided Nubia or tried to raid Nubia, which made them move their capital from Napata to Merowe, right here at the Atbara River. And there, they were, of course, more or closer to sub-Saharan Africa for trade and so forth. And they didn't need Egypt anymore. And in fact, as I said, Egypt didn't exist. Under the Romans, Egypt effectively ceased to exist. But I'm sure you all know this story. The Romans could not conquer Nubia. And it was a Nubian queen who held the Romans at bay and forced them into a peace treaty. So female power pervades and prevails in Nubia. So in any event, Merowe had existed as long as Napata had. So at least 700 years before it eventually became the capital. We think of the Meroitic period, the Meroitic Empire, Nubia's third empire, as beginning when the royal burials were moved from Napata to further south. And of course, it's Bejaroia. I know that many of you have visited and seen the huge cemeteries there of kings, queens, and wealthy elites, as well as the enormous city of Merowe that became a major city of the ancient world. And it's here in Merowe, in the Meroitic period, as we know it, as I said, Nubia's third empire, that the Nubianness really, to my eye, really comes together, and the Nubians really exact the essence of what is important to them. So they have their own gods not worshipped anywhere else, like the lion god Apetamak, whose temple this is at Naga, around the Fifth Cataract. And again, superficially, it looks like an Egyptian temple with a pylon, but Egyptian temples are most of the time multi-roomed. Here, there's just one single room dedicated to the lion. And what's also interesting is that there are one side that features male deities and another side that features female deities. And the side that features female deities is this side, the side on your right. And if you look at the pylon, I think you can make out what we call a smiting scene. The king with his arm upraised with a weapon in it, about ready to smash it down on these captives, whoever they are. So it's the moment before the action. If you look here on the other side, we see almost the same thing, except it's a queen. It's a queen in a complex garment that I know you can't really make out from this photograph, but it is clearly a queen as large as a king. It's Queen Amanitore. This is Natakamani, her son. And she has those same voluptuous, strong proportions that we saw in the figures in the amulets earlier. And here, again, as large as the king, equal to the king in every way. And there were quite a number of ruling queens in the Meroitic period, not ruling for their sons or with their sons, but ruling in their own right and respected in their own right. So jewelry we looked at, it's and the jewels continue in the Meroitic period. They make up designs. They have the sense of the Baroque in this very complex gold necklace that combines ram heads, human heads, and little upper Egyptian crowns with carnelian. But this piece, as simple as it is really my favorite because these are seed beads. You have to think of the size of a seed. They're gold, they're carnelian, and glass, each precisely cut. And when whoever wore this walked, the strands of the beads would mix together and shimmer in the sun, and really almost appear to move. So, of course, pottery we have in the Meroitic period. Now it is finally wheel made, but that sense of humor comes through, I think, in these crocodiles biting their tails. And you'll notice that it's together with a vine motif, which is right out of the classical world. Meroe was almost the hub of the world. Meroe was a very important trading center. It was the way the Greeks and the Romans access the things they needed from sub-Saharan Africa, the war elephants, the ivory, the gold, of course, and in tribute or exchange, they sent some of their finest objects, a silver chalice of the time of Augustus, a wonderful head of Dionysus, and one of the finest Greek vessels ever made, signed by an Athenian potter. So these were found in Meroe, far from the Mediterranean. We're not really clear how they reached Meroe, but they possibly through the Red Sea. But they were regarded as prizes in Meroe too. Now, it's only at this time when the people of Meroe have this active trade with Greece and Rome that they finally write down their language. Meroitic is the script. The language of Meroe existed at least since the time of Kerma, if not before, but there was no need for them to write it down. So only when Egypt ceases to exist, when Egypt is conquered, are hieroglyphs no longer the lingua franca. So they develop their own writing known as Meroitic, and we're still waiting for that language to be translated. So what happened to Meroe? We don't really know. A lot of things. The climate probably changed. The climate was constantly drying out. That brought nomadic tribes closer into the cities. They were raided. And probably the main trade route shifted from the Nile to the Red Sea, and Aksum took over Meroe's role. Aksum in Ethiopia, on the other side of the Red Sea, took over Meroe's role as a trade center. And ultimately, Christianity arrived in Nubia, but still the old traditions prevailed. Those large-scale figures taking up room, elaborate garments. Here you see reconstructed. One of the saints and a black bishop from Faras, one of the famous frescoes. And of course, Islam arrives in Nubia, but even with Islam, many of the Nubian traditions, and you know this more than I do, and I'm fascinated by it. Many of the Nubian traditions, the ancient Nubian traditions, continued. You have rocks piled like tumuli beside tombs, little offering vessels beside tombs, and I know this is not mainstream, but it still exists. And artists today, like Ishaq Abdul Ghaffur, looking at the ancient monuments and giving their own interpretations of the Nubian monuments, like this epitome that he is so beautifully decorated, and his version of a Nubian village, which might as well be a Nubian village today or before the Aswan High Dam, or both, which might as well be a slice of ancient Nubia. So why is it important to continue to preserve the cultures of Nubia? What are the lessons we can learn? I think the Nubians, the ancient Nubians, have taught us about resilience, resilience in the face of adversity, as like when the Egyptians invaded and the culture of Nubia endured for 500 years and then reemerged as that force that conquered Egypt. They taught us equality. They taught us the importance of women, not only in bearing children, but also as healers and magicians, as carriers of cultural memory, as rulers, as warriors. They taught us about adaptation, flexibility, starting anew, and working within a system, not to topple it, but to adapt it, to make it their own, to make it Nubian. And they taught us artistry. Nothing was too minor to decorate, even the body. And here you see a henna party where all of those, where they're not only decorating the body, but the women in particular, but not only, are so beautifully clothed in colorful garments. So why is it important to preserve Nubian heritage? Because it's mankind's heritage. Because understanding the greatness of our ancestors is empowering, because it shows us what we can achieve when we treat everybody equally, when we all work together, when we're willing to adapt and to compromise. And that is how we achieve greatness. So thank you.
That was amazing, Rita. Thank you so much.
I am trying to get back to you.
Here, I can.
I think I can do that. I may need to re-enter.
You're trying to get, you can, maybe if you click stop sharing, let me see. Here, how about this?
Oh, good. Perfect.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So I see that we do have, if folks have any questions, Dad, do you want me to read the questions that are in the chat so far, or do you want somebody else to do it?
You can do that. And also, I don't think Dr. Yancy reading with us. Dr.
Yes,
Yancy,
I am with you. Yes.
why don't you moderate this? Why don't you read the questions and moderate the Q&A?
Okay, no worries at all. But well, I have jotted down some of the questions. Thank you so much indeed, Dr. Rita, for the fabulous and inspiring presentation. I have two questions here handy. The first one is if you can give us 5 reasons, or I think you already mentioned them, but if you can stress them back quickly, why we should preserve the Nubian heritage, what are the value added? So this was the first question. And the second one is, do you see MFA doing a permanent exhibition? Why is the museum keeping 25,000 artifacts without a permanent exhibition?
I'm going to start with the second question because I agree with you completely. I am emerita at the museum. I am no longer connected with it. I will tell you that the good news is that the current director really understands, I believe, the importance of Nubia and sharing it with the world. I agree with you that it's unconscionable to have these objects and not show them. I am happy to say that as of the last 6 months, there are a few Nubian objects out, and they will expand the number of objects, I'm told. But I think questions like yours need to be directed to the museum. I think they're absolutely valid. And I think that every museum responds to a need, a perceived need in the community. And I will say they are trying. What is the value of preserving Nubia? Well, look at all the lessons we could learn from for today. What I think what's going on today is inconceivable to me. And this is your culture. This is Nubian culture first, but it is the world's culture. And if we were, as I said, if we were to learn the lessons that the Nubians figured out, we'd be a lot better off. So I think, I dare say I would wear any of the jewelry they produced, and I'm sure we all would. You can't but wonder when you stand in front of some of the temples or pyramids, how they were made. How is it possible to organize a group to create these things? How could you spend so much time making and decorating pots and get them so perfectly? I think we can only admire this. I think I think their appreciation of women and the status of women that we see all the way from the beginning. That's a separate lecture. I think I don't know another culture, ancient culture, that revered women in the way the Nubians revered and respected them in the way the Nubians did. I think again we have a lot to learn. There were periods of for sure hierarchy, but there were periods of equality when we think, particularly early on, when everybody worked together to a common good. Again, I feel like our job is really to spread the word about Nubia. I am appalled by how few people, at least in the United States, have barely heard of it and don't really. If they've heard of it, it's just in passing, and they can't express more than a sentence about it. So I think that your organization will really go a long way to spreading the word, and I applaud you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Ustaz Salwa Saeed is raising her hand. Yeah, Yasir.
أيوة.
Ustaz Salwa Saeed is raising her hand.
Okay. Yeah, تفضلي.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mahjoub, and thank you for the professors, both of them, especially Rita. I am very pleased. I struggled to get into the room because of this Eventbrite approach, but at the end of the day, I managed to get in with the help of one of the friends there. I have many questions. I don't want to take the time for all the other questions. If anybody raises his hand or he want to stop me at any time. Okay, let us go into the questions that I need to ask. I need to know why most of the Egyptian statues noses are knocked down. Okay, I have this. They said that it's part of the curse and stuff like that, but I don't believe in that. I thought that some of these statues belong to the Nubian culture or civilization, actually. I consider it as civilization because it has got everything, all the criteria for to be classified as civilization. So this is one of the things. When the statues in the Nubian, which is discovered in the Nubian area, whether the Barkal or the other places, they don't have this problem. They don't destroy the noses. I don't know whether it's just because they want to say that they are not African or this belongs to us in Sudan. This is my first question. My second
Oh, why don't I
question.
take these one by one? Because I
Okay,
think
great. Go ahead.
so I don't get confused. There were statue caches found in 3 different sites. All of them were destroyed, but not in a they were destroyed and then they were reverently buried in caches. So we don't know who destroyed them. There are 2 theories. One is that when at the end of the Napatan period, when that an Egyptian king might have come all the way to Nubia, and as a way of showing the Nubians were no longer in control of Egypt, he destroyed the statues. The other possibility is that in the Ptolemaic period, the generals of Alexander the Great, who were in control of Egypt, came down to Nubia and destroyed the statues. But they destroyed them in a way that killed them. When you attack the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth, where the senses are, you prevent the soul from coming and going into the statue. And that's why many of them, the noses were destroyed. Although in one case, we actually found the nose in the same cache. So the Nubian, what we guess is that probably the Nubians, after the enemy left, they gathered the statues and buried them very carefully in layers in or near the temples, so that they could be resurrected and put back together. So it was certainly an enemy that either the Egyptians or the Greek Ptolemies who destroyed them. But we're fortunate that we do have most of the statue. I am just going to plug my computer in so that it doesn't die. There. Salwa, your next, did that answer your question?
Yes, my dear. Yes, my dear. My second question is all these statues. I know that we have problems with governing in Sudan, and we lost most of our civilization with people who doesn't care, and we don't have any link with our civilization. So we end up having an identity crisis because of all these Arabs, Muslims ideas that is coming to Sudan. But I want to know where we can claim them sometime after Trump is,
well, I can tell you that there are some,
and claim all these from the Egyptian, from the American, from the French also.
Well, let me tell you what I know.
And the English, because I am living in England, and I went to the museum there, and all of the things, they always call it Egyptian civilization. They always Egyptian studies. There is no mention to the Nubian or their contribution, except on the 25th of the king there. These are 2 questions in one.
I completely understand, and I'm fighting this too. I I wasn't going to mention it, but I will say one thing. One thing I am doing, I tried teaching Nubian art and I had a very difficult time of it because there were no readily available books. So I wrote one and it will be out in February. So I think one of the things is to make it more readily available. There are many articles written about Nubia, but they're written by specialists for specialists. And I think we need to recognize that that very few people take deep dives into French, German, and English journals, and that Nubia needs to be more readily available. And I will also say that the Museum of Fine Arts and the British Museum and a number of others with Nubian collections have databases, and they're public databases. And if you go to the museum website and look under collections and type Nubia, you will see the Nubian objects they have. I know it's not like giving them back, but it was, I never thought I'd say this, but it was really lucky that when the National Museum was destroyed, that there were other sources of Nubian objects. And I will tell you that there are people, the director of the Sudan National Museum is working with others, and she has created a list of objects, a sort of online museum, and that I can tell you for sure that no respectable museum would ever now buy a Nubian object. The nice thing is that Nubian objects are very distinctly Nubian, and there's no mixing them with Egyptian objects, and I hope I've shown that. But no respectable museum would purchase a stolen object. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't because they're subject to public scrutiny. I think the concern is private collectors. The concern is nobody knows what's happening in China. Nobody knows what's happening in the Arab Emirates and so forth, because there are many private collections there. But my feeling is that these objects will eventually surface because it's like the French crown jewels. They're too well known, and they have value as objects. Very few of them have value for their material in the sense that a stone sculpture is an object of beauty, but when it's pulverized into stone dust means nothing. So I think we have to remain hopeful and know that the NCAM, the Sudanese Antiquities Service is mostly operating out of Cairo now, but they do have an international reach, and many of us are doing what we can to share what we know and what records we have of the material from the museum, so that when it does turn up, and I'm convinced that it will, it can be repatriated.
Do you know, Rita, until we speak now, as we speak now, Sudan has not signed on and certainly has not ratified the 1970 Paris Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import and export of artifacts. As we speak now, we don't have the international law cover to retrieve these artifacts.
That is
That
serious.
you are connected
That is
with.
really serious.
Sorry?
That is serious. That's extremely serious. We don't have a law
Yes, it is. They
to
have not
retrieve
signed
all
it.
these
They have not,
artifacts.
yeah, they have not signed. So we don't have the international law cover to retrieve these artifacts. Any comments here, Rita?
I'm not sure why the government of Sudan never ratified this. The US didn't ratify this 1970 law until 1983. I'm sure there are politics involved, but I don't understand them myself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I saw there was a comment about Nubians and Kush. So let me just explain a little bit about the terminology that I have been using. The earliest object I showed you went back to about 5,500 BCE, so about 7,500 years. The term Kush was first used by the Egyptians for Nubia around 2000 BCE. So if you talk about Kush, you're not talking about all of Nubia. And I asked a number of people. The terminology is a big issue. I follow your lead. You consider yourselves Nubian. You've introduced yourselves as Nubian, and I really follow you. As to what are the borders of Nubia, I personally see Nubia as stretching from north of Aswan to around the junction of the Blue and White Nile, and then the deserts to the east and west, because that's where I see the similarities of culture. And I know everybody's going to have their own definition. And I think the most
you
important
looked at
thing,
the map in the past, the map of Sudan, start from the fairest fall, including Aswan, and all this is used to be part of Sudan, all this southern Egyptian.
well,
And my last question, which is, I'm very happy to find somebody to answer these questions for me. My last question, why it is called Egyptology and not Sudantology?
that's a very good question. It might be called Nubiology now.
Nubiology, yeah.
I've heard that term. I did not invent it. Because Egypt is a Mediterranean culture, because it's when the discipline was first started in the late 19th century, it was started by the Europeans, and they saw Egypt as a biblical culture, and they sort of lopped off Egypt from Africa and made Egypt a discipline. But frankly, they didn't know about Nubia. They just began to find out about it later. But I think it is a profession that is growing. I have to say, the tragedy for all of us was the war, the most recent war. And I've been to Sudan a number of times, and I saw how the country was growing, how there were roads where there were no roads, there were hotels where there are no hotels. I saw a country on the cusp of developing a major tourism industry. And now the tragedy is it's going to take a long time for that to resume.
Everything is destroyed. Thank you for my question. Thank you very much, Professor Rita, for answering most of my question. And I hope to be there helping us to retrieve our civilization. Thank you very much.
Please lower your hand, Madam Sarwa. Thank you very much. أحمد عندك أي حاجة you want to follow up يا أحمد ولا دكتور ياسر؟
There are some questions, yeah, Prof. Lakin, are we squeezed in terms of time? Can we squeeze some questions more, or how we are doing with the time?
We're not taking time. We have to answer questions.
طيب في questions from تخيل لي سعادة السفير السابق طارق أبو صالح بيتكلم على some scholars link Abadamak, the most famous Sudanese indigenous diary, with the Indian diary Shifa, because there are many similarities between them. Do you think that is true?
I think it's entirely possible. I myself don't know enough about Shiva, but certainly it would be easy via the Red Sea to access India in the Meroitic period when we see Epidemic. I know that I suspect you're looking at the image on the back of the temple, the Lion Temple of Naga, the Epidemic Temple of Naga, where Epidemic has 4 hands and 3 heads. I I I love that image. I have another interpretation of it for myself. I think that Epidemic is looking both at the king and he's looking at the queen, and then just for symmetry's sake, and he's offering to both of them with two hands. But it is, and then for symmetry's sake, there's an image looking out at us, sort of like an early animation almost. But it's certainly possible. I just don't know enough.
Okay, there is also one question here. When Nubian Empire physical location extended to Eritrea, do you have any information about that? Even though it is a pure geographical question, but I don't know.
What I do know is that there have been some Meroitic and possibly other Nubian objects found in Eritrea. I think that it's not out of the question. Eritrea has been identified as the land of Punt also. I think that what we need is more research, more archaeology, and I bet we'll find more.
I had a question about, I mean, what distinguish, in very simple terms, the Nubian arts in general from the Egyptians. For a simple layman, what can I tell him about this kind of differences?
I think that Egyptian art tends to be austere. It tends to be very formal, and it was codified early on. I think Nubian art doesn't have those constraints. I see a greater liveliness in the representations of animals, for example. I think it's not really until the Napatan Empire and then the Meroitic Empire that humans are represented. And in the statues, when you look at the statues and look at their faces, first of all, the double uraei for the kings designate a Nubian statue. The very round, strong head, thick neck, really pronounced leg muscles and arm muscles are very distinctive of a Nubian king. We don't have private sculptures of the Napatan period. We do have, or that is non-royal sculptures. We do have non-royal sculptures of the Meroitic period, and they're just as voluptuous as the small amulets are. And the representations. There's a detail, the love of color and the love of patterning. And I really didn't have the time to get into this to the detail I could have. There's a love of patterning. You saw that in the pottery. But it's also in the clothing, patterns against patterns against patterns in a way that you would think it would clash, but somehow it doesn't. The Nubians are master metalsmiths in a way that the Egyptians aren't, and they're clever. The Egyptian material is beautiful, but it tends to be very stiff. The Nubian material is alive. Yeah, and it is distinctive. Again, I don't think it's been well enough published.
I love you, Professor Rita.
We can even start the وجدان عمر. وجدان.
Selma, maybe she has more questions. Selma,
Hello?
maybe.
Oh,
Wajdan Omar, okay.
yes. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. I really enjoyed listening to it. It was very enlightening and informative. You mentioned that after the Egyptian kingdom was overtaken by the Romans, Nubia turned to sub-Saharan Africa or elsewhere to consolidate trade or perhaps other cultural relations. My question is about the cultural influence in the Meroitic period, especially from Punt and the Indus Valley civilization. Like was mentioned earlier, that we can notice that there are some similarities. It shows the way the female deities were portrayed in wall reliefs of temples and pyramids as oversized, and maybe similarities in the regalia. Also, there are similarities with the Indus Valley civilization in the elephant statues, which we don't find in the Egyptian civilization. The most important similarity I see is between the Meroitic script and the Indian script. Both are not deciphered yet, and perhaps getting into more studies in the relationships between these two scripts can unlock, hidden information about both civilizations. So do you think that there's a potential there and there's a possibility that it can, happen? Thank you.
I fascinating. I think that yes, there's always a possibility. I think there's a tendency now, as opposed to the past, when we pigeonholed everything, when there was Egypt, Nubia, Greece, Rome, Indus Valley, and Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and those different cultures interacted from the very beginning, but we studied them separately. I think now there's a tendency to study the interconnections between the and the interactions. So I'd like the Indus Valley culture has often been considered an Asian culture, and of course the Nubian culture has been considered an African culture. It's been considered an offshoot of Egypt, which we know it's not. So I'd like to think with this new wave of scholarship that people will be looking more carefully at that material. I think the real question is what the Indus Valley was doing when Meroe was at its height, say 100 BCE to 100 CE. And I myself don't really know, but I'm sure, but I know that the people of Meroe, for sure, there are Meroitic objects found and Meroitic cultures found toward the Red Sea. And once you're on the Red Sea, it's easy enough to cross around Arabia and get to India. So I think there's I think that up until recently, those disciplines have been so separate and people haven't spoken to each other. But I think they're beginning to. So I think there's hope. And I think it would be very interesting. I think we really don't know the full extent. And of course, we look at Africa today and we see how much is desert, but we have to remember that in antiquity, it was a much wetter environment, that the climate has become significantly drier, especially from the earlier periods. So there was much more possibility of interaction.
Any more
Okay, thank you
questions?
so much.
Ustaz Ahmed Al-Tahir. What happened to the Oloi? The Oloi that were found broken at the feet of Amani Shikhetu. Yeah, they are in the Museum of Fine Arts. Did the project go any further? Were you able to construct one of them?
There I have happy news. Those alloy, there are, as I understand it, 6 sets of ranging in size from maybe 12 inches to maybe 30 inches. They were the focus of a major European, multi-million-dollar European grant. And there were conservators, musicologists, archaeologists, and somebody who's an expert in reconstruction of musical instruments. And an exact replica was made. Those alloy are absolutely fascinating. They were deliberately broken, as you said. They were placed at the entrance to the burial chamber, the tomb itself of Amani Shakheto, the queen, and that was the same tomb that the beautiful jewelry that's now in Munich and Berlin was found. So clearly, this was a period of tremendous wealth. The alloy contain little dolphin figures that are Greek, and are Greek in origin, and they also contain some olive wood that suggests that they were made in Greece and a Greek import. But we will one day in the not too distant future, actually, there's a book being published right now that's the papers of a group of professionals who studied these, and I think it'll be out within the year. So these have been reconstructed insofar as possible. What I remember initially were these fragments, a few centimeters long of bits of corroded bronze and ivory and so forth. And now they actually look like musical instruments. So hold tight. In a few months, we'll have a book. And it is amazing. And I think there is also a recording. But if you look at the MFA's website, or under alloy, or the conservation website under alloy, there's a special link to the alloy. They're fascinating. The best preserved musician's kit from antiquity.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Yeah, my question would be, and I know we've talked about this, is how is like an increase in public education about Nubia and Nubian heritage, how would an increase in education about Nubia impact the broader community outside of the Sudanese community? What impact would it have on us, like as a whole?
I think one word, empowerment. Nubia is in Africa. Nobody's ever questioned that. Although they have sometimes questioned Egypt. And when you have somebody who may not know what his or her ancestry is, or what his people did, and when that person stands in front of a colossal statue of a Nubian king and looks at its features and realizes it's black and that these are his or her ancestors, I think that's empowerment. I think we had a tendency in the US, at least, to teach, when we taught Africa, it was from slavery to Martin Luther King. And what empowerment is there in that, especially when you look at some situations today? But when you look at these objects, there's a sense of pride. For anybody, they're beautiful. But when you realize, as a Black person, these are your ancestors, your direct ancestors, I think that that spells empowerment.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you.
Anything more? Any more questions before Ustaz Tariq Abu Saleh closes for us?
I think Salwa may have another question, or
Yes, please. I just would like to ask whether you come across the building, because my first degree is in architecture, and I found out that there is a unique system of windows at the bottom and the top, where they do the cross ventilation is round system. And also there is a staircase in the old building, which belongs to the Nubian civilization. There is also a kingdom of Kush. And also there is also in Sawakin, which is an island away from Port Sudan, there is a mixture of statues which definitely do not belong to the Islamic period. It belongs to the Nubian, or the thing like statues of animals, and statues which is not allowed in Islam, because they are not supposed to do statues like this. So there is a lot of things scattered all over the place. And in the building, they have a very unique system of, knowing about the time, knowing about the ventilation, knowing about using staircase and using the top of the building. Although we didn't recognize all these things until now in Sudan, to have our own style suitable for Africa in Sudan, style of architecture. Thank you.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least. I think this is something that you need to work on.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
also,
think we all could learn a lot from that.
yeah, but that area is very rich. The Awash River in Ethiopia, this is where they found Mother Lucy, 3.4 million years old, and 40% of her skeleton is now in the museum in Addis Ababa. When Barack Obama visited, he went and saw her, and then he went back at 6 o'clock the following morning. He said, I want to go back and see her again. So the area is very rich. We had an event also from Eritrea. Eritrea is very rich in archaeology as well. Tariq, do you want to close for us and if there are other questions? Tariq,
Yeah, I have some questions.
تفضل.
Yeah. Thank you a lot, Professor Rita, for this elaborate presentation. It was really a very great lecture. We enjoyed it so much today. مصورات الصفرة, as you know, is one of the most unique sites in Sudan. We have the great enclosure in Musawarat. Some archaeologists think it was an arena to train elephants. Some think it was a resort for the king of Kush, and others think it was the first college in Merowe. What do you think about that? Do you have any idea about that?
Well, I somehow don't think it was for training elephants. That doesn't ring true. There are several temples in it. What we do know is that there are certain places, this is much earlier, like Nopta Playa, for example, which I think of as in Nubia, that were gathering places, great public gathering places, perhaps for the celebrations of certain holidays or the harvest. I don't know. Musarawat Sufra is unbelievable. It's absolutely fascinating. Its emphasis on elephants is like something I've never seen before, although that would have been at the height of the Ptolemies' need for elephants. I think if it were, it's been excavated, but I think there's a lot more to excavate. And my best guess is that it was a gathering place. And of course, it's in the height of that of the island of Merowe, and I'd love to know what it was for, and I'd love to see more work there. But that's what's so interesting. We find out new things all the time, and there's still a lot that we don't know. But I don't know any other culture that built anything like that. We don't even know the date of it. And again, it's not just the one big enclosure, but several enclosures at Musarawat. It never ceases to inspire awe.
Thank you. Closing comment, ya Tariq, if you can.
Professor, if you don't mind, I have one provocative question to Dr. Professor Rita.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, always when it comes to my mind when I see the link between, all this ancient civilization, especially in Africa, Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, why those people, they cannot, figure out a way to build bridges more than create all this chaos all the time for us? Is it because they don't know the rich history that's linking people, or is it because it is a narrow vision, a tunnel vision to, we just need to live today and forget about the history and what it can teach us?
Well, I think you have something there. I think they don't know the history. And I think people are so focused in on power. I wish I had an answer. because you can't help but stand in awe of ancient Nubia. And I have to say, the Nubians I have met have been so generous in extending their friendship that I think that is also something that the world could learn and would benefit from. I don't understand the modern world.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. It's very difficult to understand it.
I think my dad is trying to find a book in his collection to show. But
An extensive library.
he does have an extensive library indeed. I have your Ancient Nubia book right here. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, well, as you know, there are a couple of there will be a couple of books coming out. One I called The Image of the Black in Nubia, that Selma, you and your dad both contributed to. And another one that I mentioned that I did on just Nubian art. And this image
Nice.
of the Black in Nubia is being published by Harvard, and it's from ancient Nubia until Nubia tomorrow. We have a brilliant contemporary artist writing about Nubian art of tomorrow.
That's beautiful.
We comment about the Nubians as people and not the archaeology. This is the book of the Nubian Exodus. This is how badly they were treated after the high dam was built. And to show the discontent, to show the punishment, unnecessary punishment of the Nubians, they were told that they should have a conference and come out with where they want to be relocated when the dam became a reality. And this group, 206 of them, they chose Al-Qadr, which is around Khartoum. 394 chose Khashmal Girba, which is out in the east. And the government took them to Khashmal Girba rather than to Al-Qadr. And in the schools, the children were told that they should not talk in their own language. They have got to speak Arabic. And they call it Rutana. Rutana is the noise and the sound of the camels. It is such an insult. The Rutana was the Arabic language because it is the foreign language, and the Nubian is the indigenous language of the people. So there has been systematic breaking and slaughtering of the Nubian heritage in Sudan by the Sudanese of the Nubian origin. Tariq, do you want to close for us?
Yes.
تفضل.
I would like to thank Professor Rita Freed for this lecture, which offers deep insights into the importance of preserving our invaluable Nubian heritage. Today we had a wonderful lecture marking the official inauguration of our newly established society, the Nubian Society of Canada. I was honored to meet Professor Rita in October 2019 when I visited the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston with some Sudanese friends to see the Ancient Nubia Now exhibition. I had the pleasure of meeting her again in May 2022 when she delivered a lecture titled The Empires of Ancient Nubia at the University of Toronto. If I may add a few words, I would say that preserving Nubian heritage is vital for the Sudanese people as it performs a core part of their national and ethnic identity. The Nubian indigenous to northern Sudan along the Nile represent one of Sudan's oldest and most distinct ethnic groups, with a history spanning more than 5,000 years. Their unique languages traditions, music, dances, and oral histories connect modern Sudanese to their ancestors, fostering a profound sense of belonging and continuity. Nubian heritage provides irreplaceable evidence of Sudan's ancient civilizations, such as the Kingdom of Kush, which produced pyramids, temples, and innovations in architecture and trade that rivaled those of ancient Egypt. Sites like Merewi, Kerma, and Old Nungula, many of which are listed as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, offer tangible links to this past, allowing Sudanese people to reclaim a history often overshadowed by colonial narratives that portrayed Nubia as inferior. The destruction of museums and artifacts not only erases history, but also undermines the intangible heritage, songs, dances, and stories that binds communities together. By safeguarding Nubian tradition, Sudanese people reinforce a national identity that values inclusivity, reduces the risk of division, and strengthens resilience against fragmentation. Today, amid threats such as looting and displacement, preservation efforts like the Sudan Cultural Emergency Recovery Fund create jobs in archaeology, crafts, and education. For Sudanese youth, such initiatives instill pride, knowledge, countering illiteracy and disconnection from their roots. The ongoing conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, along with the chaos and destruction that accompanied the rapid support forces' control over Khartoum, has led to the widespread looting of the National Museum, Sudan National Museum, which houses the world's largest Nubian collection. I would like to conclude by saying that without preserving our heritage, an entire generation risks losing the relics and stories that define its historical depth. Most importantly, in our current situation in Sudan, fostering national unity, reconciliation, social cohesion, and pride in our country is scarred by conflict and ethnic tension. This can help promote unity by celebrating our shared roots and diversity. This in turn will also support efforts to protect cultural sites amid the ongoing civil war. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Selma, do you want to say goodbye to Rita and thank her on our behalf?
Of course. Thank you, Rita. From the first time that we met, you've honestly made such a difference in my approach to Nubian heritage. And we're really grateful that you stand as a voice for the Sudanese and Nubian community. And you really make sure that we're known in the field and try to get as much representation as possible. And you've always been like that since day one, and you don't want anything in return. It's just because it's what you believe is right, and that touches us all very much. And you speaking with us today for now 2 hours is just another example of that. So we're really grateful. And I hope that folks can follow up with all the work that you have coming up and the books that you have coming up. And if there's anything that you ever want us to share with the members of NUSCA, we'd be happy to do so.
Well, thank you all. I feel I've been greatly honored by having had access to this material, having been able to learn about it, and having been able to see it for myself. And as I said, Nubia found me. And I wanted to thank the ambassador for his words, because I think those touched me in a way that I look at the art and the material culture, and I know I count many Nubians among my friends, but to hear the stories of the agonies that people went through, it is a reminder of how important preserving this cultural heritage is. Not only the material culture, but as you said, also the intangible culture. And many of us stand ready to help you in any way we can.
Okay, cheerio.
Well, thank
and
you all for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking with us. We really appreciate it, Dr. Freed.
Okay,
Thanks so
guys.
much, Professor Rita.
It's been a
Thank you
great
so much.
pleasure. Sorry?
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week coming up, Rita.
You too. You all as well.
Thank you.
And we'll
Bye-bye.
see everyone in the next lecture about the rock dance between the third and the fourth cataract. But that will be a different subject. Take care, Rita. God bless you. Take care.
Thanks, Rita.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you again. Thank
Okay,
you.
all the best. Bye-bye.